Hello all, welcome back to our lecture series on Java AWT, and today we are going to see some of the fundamental controls in AWT for GUI programming. The objective is to learn about the basics only, and we are not going into the depth of GUI programming using Java AWT controls. Controls allow a user to interact with the program in a graphical user interface. In the figure, you can see a few controls like the canvas, label, a list box, a text field, a button, a checkbox, and a combo box. The main controls supported by AWT are labels, push buttons, checkboxes, choice lists, scroll bars, and text editing control, or also called text field. How to add and remove controls to your graphical user interface. We have already seen the hierarchy of component class, and we have seen that there is a subclass called container for component, and two concrete classes, that is frame and applet. They will implement the methods of container class. In fact, this container class has got a method called add, and using this method we can add different components to our frame or applet window. The main components other than this frame and applet window are button, label, checkbox, choice box, scroll bar, etc. Similarly, the container class has a method remove, which is used for removing a component from the GUI. We will see the examples of these add and remove methods shortly. Controls can create events. In fact, except labels, all other AWT controls can create events. How do you handle them? We have already seen the event handling mechanism in Java. We create an event listener that handles the event from the control, and then we register the event listener with the event that is generated from that control. When we discuss about GUI controls, there is a special kind of exception that worth mentioning. This is called the headless exception, and this exception is thrown when a GUI component is instantiated in a non-interactive environment. Now let's introduce a few AWT controls. The first of them is the label. A label is simply a static text which displays a text on the window. The class label has got three different constructors. The first of them passes nothing to the constructor, so it simply creates a label with an empty text in it. The second one passes a string to the constructor, so that the label is created with this string as the static text. And finally, we pass a string as well as an integer parameter, and the integer parameter shows the alignment of the static text in the label. The alignment values can be left, right, or center. A label provides a few other methods also. The first is setText, which sets the static text of the label. Then we have getText, which retrieves the static text of the label. Then we have setAlignment and getAlignment to deal with the alignment of the static text in the label, and the functions of these methods are evident from the name itself. And remember that a label cannot create any event at all. Now let's see a very basic example of a label in AWT controls. As usual, this program creates an applet, and in the init method I have created two labels. So this is how I create my label. My label 1 is equal to new label, and here I pass the static text associated with the label. The first one has the static text, this is a label, and second has this is another label, and then I use the add method to add these two controls or these two labels to my applet window. Let's compile and execute this program, and the name of this program is labeldemo.java. So let me compile it. So it compiled successfully. Now let me call the applet viewer. Sorry, there is a spelling mistake. In fact, it should be capital L, label demo.java. Yeah. This is the applet, and here you can see two different static text or two different labels. The first one has the static text. This is a label, and second is this is another label. So pretty easy. Our next AWT control is the button, and this is one of the most useful and most used AWT controls. A button contains a label, and it generates an event when pressed. We have some methods associated with the button control. We have two constructors available. The first is button with no parameter at all, and the second is button with a string passed as the parameter. In the first constructor, a button with no label is created, and in the second one, a button with the label which is set as the parameter string passed to the constructor will be created. And then we have two other methods. The first is set label and second is get label. The set label sets the static text of the button, and the get label retrieves it. Now let's see how a button can handle events. And Java uses its beautiful event handling mechanism for handling the events of the button press. So we may see a flowchart associated with the event handling on button press. When the button is clicked, an action event is generated. We have already seen this action event in our previous classes, and corresponding to this action event, we should have already written an action listener class, and this action listener class is notified when the action event is generated. And when this action listener class is notified about the action event, it invokes the method action performed. Here you can see the Java implementation of the flowchart that we have seen. Note that I have created a button called my button, and the label of the button is simply my button, and then I add this button to the applet window. Then I add the event listener class associated with this button, and here the event listener class that I am using is simply this itself. So this means the present class itself has the action listener associated with this button. So the action listener class associated with the action event has a special method called action performed, and this one receives an action event object as the parameter. What we do is we obtain the label of the button from which this event has been generated, and for this we use the command, we use the function getAction command of the action event class. Then we compare the string that we have just retrieved with the label that we are expecting, and if they match, then our handling code goes here. If you think that a string matching with the label of the button is a bit ugly, then we have a workaround. We can use the getSource method of the action event class, and this getSource method retrieves the button from which the action event has occurred. So we can use a matching like ae.getSource is equal to my button, that is my button is the one that has just created this event. Then we can handle that event. Here you can see an implementation of a button demo. As usual, this is an applet, and you can see the definition of the applet here, that is public class button demo that extends an applet, and this one implements action listener. We have used a string variable called a message, which is going to display a message in the applet window. Then inside the init we have created a button. The name of the button is B1, and the static text or the label of the button is simply button 1. And we add this button to the applet window. Then we register the action listener associated with this button. And here again we specify that this class itself is the action listener class for this button. So this class should have a method called action performed. This is to override the default action performed class in the action listener interface. So this action performed method receives a parameter called action event, and we compare the action command parameter of this action event class with the label of the button from which the event has been generated. So we do a string matching like if ae.getAction command is equal to button 1, then what we do is we populate the string variable msg with a string button 1 clicked. Then we call the repaint so that the paint method of this applet is invoked. Inside the paint method, we simply display the contents of the string variable msg at a location 400, 300. So let's execute this one. First we compile the javac button demo.java. So it compiles. Let's execute that with your applet viewer. See, you can see that our button is there. That is, the label of the button is simply button 1. Let me click it. So when I click it, a message has been shown that button 1 is clicked. Our next AWT control is the checkbox. We know that a checkbox is suitable for simply ticking or unticking an option. For checkbox, we have a few different constructors. The first one is simply checkbox with no parameter passed to that. It creates a checkbox with no label at all. The second one receives a string as the argument, and here a checkbox is created with this string as the label. And in the next one, we have a checkbox with a string and a boolean variable which shows the checkbox is to be created with a tick on or a tick off. If the value of on is if the value of the boolean variable on is true, then automatically a tick is placed in the checkbox. Otherwise, there won't be any tick at all. The next constructor is checkbox with a string, a boolean variable which shows whether the checkbox is created to be in a ticked state or an unticked state, and then we have a variable of the class checkbox group, and we will see this checkbox group in coming sessions. Then we have the final constructor, that is a checkbox with a string which is the label of the checkbox. Then we have a checkbox group that we are going to see shortly, and finally we have the Boolean variable on, which shows whether the checkbox is to be created in a ticked state or not. In fact, the difference between the last two constructors is in the order of the parameters only. We have a few methods associated with the checkbox. The first is getState, which retrieves the value true or false depending whether a tick is already placed in the checkbox or not. Then we have setState, using which we can place a tick or we can simply untick the checkbox. Then we have functions for getting the label, that is getLabel, and for setting the label, that is setLabel. The event handling mechanism of checkboxes is quite similar to that of the buttons, and when a checkbox is selected or deselected, an item event is generated. Remember, in the case of buttons, when it is pressed, an action event would have been generated, but here it is item event which is generated when a checkbox is selected or deselected. Automatically there is the corresponding listener class which is called the item listener, which is notified. The item listener invokes the method item state changed, and we can override this method to have our own handling for this checkbox. Here we have the implementation of the previous flowchart. The implementation looks almost similar to that of the command button or the push button. The differences are marked in red. Here the applet implements item listener interface, and in the init method we create a checkbox, and the label of the checkbox is example checkbox. We haven't specified whether the checkbox is to be created in a ticked state or an unticked state. So by default the checkbox is created in unticked state. Then we add this checkbox to the applet window. Then we register the event listener class associated with this checkbox using add item listener method. The present class itself acts as the event listener class for this checkbox, and hence we have the implementation of the method item state changed, which we can use for overriding the default implementation. This item state changed function receives an object of the item event class. Here we can see a demo program that uses a checkbox. We have created an applet, and as in the previous case we have a message which is used for displaying a message in the applet window. Then we have the checkbox. So we instantiate the checkbox with the static text checkbox 1, and we add this checkbox to our applet window using the add function. Then we register the event listener associated with this checkbox using add item listener, and event listener class is the present class itself. So we have the item state changed. Here we have an object of item event. So we now try to get the state of the checkbox. So we get the state using the getState method. So if cb1.getState is equal to true, then we populate the message as checkbox 1 is ticked. Otherwise we set the MSG variable as checkbox 1 is unticked. Then we call the repaint function so that the paint method is automatically invoked, and in the paint method we simply display the MSG variable at a location 400, 300. Let's compile and execute this code. Java C checkbox demo.java. Okay, it compiles. Let me call the applet viewer once again. Okay, you can see a checkbox here. So when I press this tick, when I tick this checkbox, okay, there is message checkbox 1 is ticked. When I untick this checkbox, checkbox 1 is unticked. This message appears here. A set of checkboxes can be grouped together using the control checkbox group. And this checkbox group is also called radio buttons. And in the case of a checkbox group or radio button, only one of these checkboxes can be ticked at a time. So if I click on another checkbox in the control, automatically the tick is vanished from the checkbox which already had it. So that is why it is called a radio button, where it simply acts as a radio. And you can see the difference in shape between a single checkbox and checkboxes in a checkbox group. Here the checkbox, in a checkbox group, these checkboxes have taken the shape of a circle rather than a square. This is how we create the checkbox group. That is, we instantiate the checkbox group using new checkbox group. The constructor doesn't take any parameter at all. Then we create the checkboxes, and we specify that these checkboxes belong to this checkbox group by giving the name of the checkbox group in the constructor. In a checkbox group, we can obtain the selected checkbox using the command, using the function get selected checkbox. The next AWT control is the choice control. It is also called a combo box. This is almost similar to a checkbox group, but it has the added advantage that it saves a lot of space in the window, because if not clicked, it remains in the shrinked state. And we have a number of methods associated with this choice control. The first is the constructor, that is choice. It doesn't take any parameter at all, so it simply creates a blank combo box. In order to add the different strings to this combo box, we have the add method, and the signature of the method is void add string name. That is, whatever string which is passed to this method, the string will be added to the choice box. Then we have the function get selected item, which retrieves the selected item from the choice control. Similarly, we have get selected index. Here, instead of retrieving the string itself, we get the index of the string which has been selected. And always remember that the index starts at 0. Then we have get item count, which gives the total number of items in the choice control. Then we can programmatically select a string at a particular index using the select function. We have another overloaded method, which is select with a string passed as the parameter. Here, instead of passing the index, we are passing the string itself. Then we have finally the get item, which retrieves the string at a particular index. Here you can see how events associated with the choice list are handled. The main event associated with the choice list is the item event, Uh, this is handled using the item listener interface. In this example, you can see that I have made a choice list using the default constructor, that is a constructor with no parameter at all. Then I populate the choice list with the different strings. Then I add this choice list to the applet window. Finally, I register the items event associated with this choice list. Again, the item listener class is the present class itself, so that the present class contains the item state changed method. I have to override this item state changed method to have my own handling of the choice list event. The next AWT control is the list. This is actually an expanded choice list, but the difference is that in the case of a list, there is a possibility of multiple selection of items. The different constructors are presented here. The default constructor is list with no parameter. Then we have another constructor, list with the parameter number of rows. Again, we have another constructor where we pass the number of rows as well as the possibility of multiple select. Here we have the different methods associated with the list. We have the add method, which adds or appends a string to the list. Then we have the add method with an index specified. The string which is passed to this method will be added at the index that we have just specified in the method. Always remember that the indexing starts at 0, and if you specify the index as -1, the item is added to the end of the list. Then we have a get selected item, which retrieves the string which is selected in the list. If we have selected more than one item, or if we haven't selected any item at all, then this get selected item returns null. Similarly, we have get selected index, which returns the index of the item which is selected in the list, and if more than one item is selected or no item is selected at all, then this function returns -1. Similar to get selected item and get selected index, we have get selected items and get selected indexes specifically for list boxes where multiple items can be selected. So here we retrieve an array of strings and an array of integer respectively. Then we have get item count, which retrieves the number of items in the list. We have the method select, which selects the item at a particular index, and we have get item, which retrieves the item at a particular index. How do we handle events from the list? There are two possibilities. A list can be double clicked and single clicked. When a list is double clicked, an action event is generated, which can be handled using the action listener interface. When it is single clicked, or when an item in the list is single clicked, an item event is generated, which can be handled using item listener class. We have another powerful control in AWT, which is called a text field. This is usually called an edit control because we can type and edit text in this control. And this text field is a subclass of the text component class. We have again a number of constructors available. The default constructor is the text field with no parameter, which is simply creates an empty text field. Then we have a text field with int numchars. This constructor creates a text field which has a width of numchars. Then we have a text field with a string str passed to it. This text field is initialized with str in it. And finally we have text field with string str and int numchars. This constructor creates a text field which is initialized with str and numchars characters wide. We have a number of methods associated with the text field. The getText simply retrieves the text in the text box. Then we have setText, which sets a text into the text box. Then we have getSelectedText, which returns the selected portion of the text in the text box. Then we have select with 2 indices passed to it, the start index and end index. This method selects the characters beginning at start index and ending at end index -1. Then we have a Boolean function is editable, which returns true if the text box is editable by the user. And then we have setEditable, which sets the editable property of the text box. Then we have setEchoChar, characters ch. This you must have seen a number of occasions, especially when you type a password. Here whatever you type, only a star or another special character is echoed in the text field. That I mean, it is for these kind of situations that we use the setEchoChar functionality. Then we have the Boolean function echoChar is set, which returns true if the text box is already set with an echoChar. And then we have a getEchoChar, which returns the echoed character. How to handle the events from a text field? We know that a text field is very much rich in functionality for editing, and there is not much need of handling events such as pressing a key or double clicking on the text field. So most of the events can be ignored for default handling itself. When an enter is pressed in a text field, an action event is generated, which if needed we can handle. We introduce one more control in this lecture, that is the text area. It's a multi-line editor. In the case of text field, we had the provision of typing in one row only, but in the case of text area we have multiple rows possible. We have multiple constructors associated with this control. The default constructor text area simply creates a text area, and this constructor doesn't have any parameter passed to it at all. Then we have the constructor text area with a number of lines and width specified in numchars. We can initialize the text area with a string using the third constructor. Then we have a text area with a string and the number of lines and numchars passed as parameters. So this constructor initializes the text area with a string, and here in the num lines specify the number of rows, and numchar specifies the width of the text area in terms of characters. And finally we have a text area constructor which takes a string, takes the number of rows, takes the width in terms of characters, and finally the status of the scroll bars. And the status of the scroll bars can be scroll bars, no scroll bar at all, and horizontal scroll bars only, vertical scroll bars only and both scroll bars. We have a few methods associated with the text area. The functionalities are evident from the name itself. The append method simply appends a string to the text area, and then we have the insert method which inserts a string at a particular index, and then we have replace range which replaces the string from start index to end index -1 with str. Then about the events associated with the text area, again, as in the case of text field, we are not much concerned about the events which are generated by the text area. In fact, the text areas generate only got focus and lost focus events, and they are handled using the focus listener interface. Finally, as an example, let's create a calculator as shown in the diagram. The calculator has got two editable text boxes to receive two operands, and there are 4 different buttons, each representing plus, minus, multiply and divide operations, and on clicking these buttons, the result is to be shown in an uneditable text box. The program looks like this. Again, we create an applet, and the name of the applet is calculator demo. We start by importing all the necessary packages. We need awt, awt.event, and finally applet. Then we create our main class, that is calculator demo. This one is inherited from applet, and this is implementing the action listener class. Remember, in fact, it is not action listener class, it is action listener interface. Remember, we are going to handle the action events from the clicks of the 4 different buttons. We declare all the controls here. We need a label text field pair for operand 1, again a label text field pair for operand 2, and another label text field pair for showing the result. Then we have 4 different buttons, plus, minus, multiply and divide. Then let's look into the init method. Here we initialize all the controls. We initialize the text field for operand 1 and operand 2 with a width of 10 characters, and again the result also is a text field having a width of 10 characters, but for the result we set the editable property to false. Then we have the 4 different buttons. They are created using the button constructors. Then we add these controls to the applet window using the add method. And finally, we have to add the action listener. We have to register the action listener methods for these button controls, and for all these 4 buttons, the corresponding listeners, the listener is the present class itself. Since we have registered these action listeners associated with these buttons, we need to override the action performed method of the action listener interface. Here what we do is we have to obtain the strings in the text boxes associated with operand 1 and operand 2. Then we need to convert these text box strings. Then we need to convert the strings in this text box to float values. That is why you see the code here. op1 assigns float.parseFloat text op1.getText. So you obtain the text from the txt op1, and then you convert that to float. Similarly, you do it for the second text box also. Then you initialize the result variable. Now you need to check from where the action event occurred. If it has occurred from the plus button, we can compute the result as op1.op2. Sorry, op1 plus op2. Then if it is from minus, it is op1 minus op2. If it is from multiply, it is op1 times op2, and if it is from divide, it is op1 divided by op2. Finally, we set the result as string to the result text box. Let's compile and execute this program. So we are compiling it. It compiled successfully. Let's call the applet viewer. Okay, here it is. We have the text label operand 1 and then label operand 2. Then we have the equals label here. We have two text boxes. The first is associated with operand 1, then this is associated with operand 2. Finally, there is an uneditable text box which will show the result. Then we have 4 different buttons: plus, minus, multiply and divide. Let's give values here. Maybe 10 here and 12 here. So let's add them first. It is 22. If we subtract, it is minus 2. If we multiply, it is 120. And if we divide, it is 0.833, etc. That is all for this video lecture. We studied about the basics of AWT controls. Hope you understood and enjoyed the concepts. Thank you for your patience and cooperation.